insects evokes our worst memories, often painful, and for a lot of people, insects are repulsive, allergenic, properties can be beneficial for our health. The Atrax is the most venomous spider in the world, but other people find in them many valuable qualities for science, medicine, architecture, and even the arts.
I found a spider in my backyard, and I was just wondering if you knew what kind
They're
it was or whether it
impassioned
was
about them,
dangerous.
obsessed, fanatic.
Yeah,
They've got them under their
in fact, a
skin.
male funnel-web spider, the most deadly spider in the world. That's pretty good. Just be careful if you're gardening, and if you catch any more up, we'll love to take them.
For centuries, many insects have inspired many artists, writers, poets, painters, good suppliers of Atrax for the University of Sydney. Through their work, the insect can seem either subject of fascination for modern amusing or surprising, but it never leaves us indifferent.
We're interested in the Atrax species of spiders because they produce around about 600 compounds in their venom.
The insect the most frequently represented through the ages in art is doubtless the fly,
So these
but there's a reason for
can
that.
potentially be developed as insecticidal agents because they're highly selective for insect species.
3 children out of 4 are born with a fly as their first companion. For psychiatrists and historians, the fly is one of the animals which affect certain components of the venom act only on the nervous systems of insects. The fly has thus inspired many isolated and integrated into insecticides against crop-destroying pests. At the Renaissance, flies were particularly abundant, and the Italian and Flemish schools of painting and were used to give the false perspectives which artists used to show just how Viagra substitute is thus under investigation. The venom acts on the nervous system, unlike Viagra, which induces vascular dilatation. Flies symbolize the ephemeral nature of life and combine all that is satanic with in the near future. It may become possible to use a peptide. That is, a group of proteins from the venom for therapeutic purposes. In the USA, researchers have also shown that tarantula venom has positive qualities. Objective? Catch that fly with the hooks?
We think that this natural peptide derived from spider venom can be used as therapy for a variety of diseases associated with mechanical defects. These include muscular dystrophy, cardiac arrhythmias, incontinence, and possibly brain tumors.
Dr. Sachs, an American
Pictures
researcher,
showing
has
flea
already
humps
succeeded
only
in
portray
reproducing
young
this
girls.
peptide, code MTX4,
However,
found in the venom of the
lice
tarantula.
humps on people
This peptide
show
appears
men
to be
and
particularly
women,
effective
young
in
and old.
controlling heart rhythm.
Okay, Tom, here it comes.
And this leads us to think that there's a relationship between the biology of the flea and the hormonal condition of the girl who has been
This is
stung.
a sick muscle cell. It should just be lying there quietly, but it's not. This is a dystrophic muscle
Over
cell.
the
It
last
shouldn't
20
be doing
years,
it.
Professor Doby has visited
I think
museums
the
all
block
over the world
spider
to look at
peptide.
paintings representing used in humans. This peptide could immobilize the cells responsible for deregulating flea hunting could rapidly become an erotic game. Its principle of action, to block
Fleas
the cells that
can
cause
be
an
a
uncontrolled increase in
fantasy.
contractions without affecting the cells
Some
associated
people
with normal rhythm.
identify with the rewards the insect gets
With
at
infinite
night.
care, Dr. Sachs manipulates the synthetic peptide, which is priced at over $2,000
That theme
for 1
is
milligram.
present in many paintings, where you can
could say
see
that tarantulas
young
are dear
girls
to his heart.
in extremely sexy night attire looking for a flea in their
However,
nightie.
the future of spider venom may
This
also
is
lie in
also
its
the
action on
theme
the
of
brain.
many, often erotic poems,
In brain tumors,
which are
we know
sometimes
that the presence of cancer
borderline
cells induces other
pornography.
cells to release chemicals that promote tumor growth. It would be beneficial then
Firstly,
to be
she
able to
sucked
block
me.
them.
Now she is sucking you. And in this flea, our two bloods are mingled.
Rosie is our
Stop.
pet tarantula.
Do not
She's
kill
over
this
30
flea,
years old,
in which you and I
she
are
serves as
more
our
than
laboratory
married.
mascot. We actually haven't taken venom from her because she's too much of a friend.
According
We
to a
take
story
venom,
told just
start out
last
with venom
century
from
in
Berrod.
Puy-en-Velay in France, feminine idleness provoked the wrath of God. If spiders are becoming our friends, thanks to the positive qualities of their venom, what about bee venom?
Hello, here's your mail.
Ah, thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.
Good day.
Item by item, thanks to a network of international correspondence, Professor Doby has collected most unusual artworks. Like these 17th century
This
ivory
medicine has
flea
a name
traps,
today,
worn by
therapy,
attached
method
to a
that goes
necklace
back to ancient
hung
times.
between the breasts. These cylinders hold the stuffing
Bee
soaked with
therapists
odorous
sting their
substances
patients
or
at the
honey to
acupuncture
attract
points.
fleas.
The
A
therapeutic
flea captured on the
indications
body
are
of a loved
primarily
one was kept alive
rheumatism,
as long as
arthritis,
possible in a
and
tiny
multiple
gilt cage.
sclerosis.
At its death, it was enshrined in a locket.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. That's where you want it, huh? Oh, I think that's an atomic.
In the 15th century, high society ladies started to wear special furs called flea furs, often decorated with precious stones and gold. The furs
After
trapped
each
the
session,
fleas they
the bee
attracted.
therapist has
These
the
were
patient
reserved
sign a
for women,
discharge in
men
the
did
event
not
of
wear them.
allergy. The reason is
60,000
people
although
in
at that
America
time men's
indulge in bee
garments were as
therapy
ornate as
regularly
women's,
at
it
specialist
seems that
practitioners
fleas do not live
and
on
even
men.
within the family.
Every evening, the fleas were removed from the women's furs.
I am a woman, 53 years old, who has recently been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I saw on your website that you have written a
Up
book
until the
called How
20th
Well Are You
century,
Going
as
to
many
Be?
English
And I was
postcards
wondering
show,
if bees
flea
might be
removal
able to
was an
help.
obligatory
Pat Wagner
everyday
has become
activity.
himself and escaped the fatal outcome predicted by
While
her
old
doctor
postcards
for
at
her
the flea
multiple
market
sclerosis.
are artistic and
Pat has
satiric,
become a
lice
believer
cards are a
and
real
bee therapist.
ethnological record.
She reminds us that the bee is cited
In Brittany,
30
lice
times in
hunts
the
were
Bible.
such that these glorious combats were immortalized by hundreds
Many
of
times I
postcards
have stopped
made by the
people
best
that have come
photographers
in
of
with
the time.
canes or crutches or something due to various problems with the legs.
And nobody was offended
And
to receive
have them
from
come back
friends
in
or
after
family.
they've left in a hurried manner, and I'm concerned with what's wrong. And I said, "What's happening?" They say, "I left my cane or I left my crutch. Where is it? I can't find it." And I find it humorous that they've gone out of here without something that they couldn't come in the
Some
house
Breton
without.
ladies remember this.
It's a miracle. It's wonderful.
Time for a good gossip. How are you doing?
In France,
I remember
Professor
this
Bernard
one.
Descartes
I can
is
see
also
my mother
using a
looking for
miraculous
lice in
therapy,
my hair.
bandaging wounds with
My
honey
brother
for healing
stood behind my
scars.
mother laughing and watching. There I am. I must have been 12 at the time. I did them in
I
turn.
believe that what is
I remember my
crucial is to make
children
sure
saying
the
that
honey
they sat
penetrates
next to the
deeply
doctor's
into
children in
all
school
the
and that the
tiny cracks
doctor's
of the
children
wound
also had
to
lice.
avoid any pulling occurring.
Is that true?
Honey is used for healing difficult wounds. Its advantage is that the enzymes
In order to
in
bear
honey
witness
produce
to his
just the
quest,
required amount
Professor
of
Dobie
hydrogen
organizes
peroxide to
mobile
disinfect
stands
the
for his
wound,
symposium.
while maintaining a
How to
humid
know everything
environment
about
that
fleas and
encourages
lice
soul
and the history of
regeneration.
art that you never dared to ask.
There are some amusing stories on honey-based dressings, such as a medical consultant who refused claims for such dressings
A book
on
of
the
400
pretext that
pages
they
listing the
contained honey.
collected work is now available, a really
Even though it's
titanic
15
task.
euros
And as the
cheaper than
professor
most
likes to
healing
remind
products,
us, the flea
and
is a
above
very
all,
agreeable
allows you
insect,
to get back
and
to
I'm
work
persuaded
twice as
that
quickly.
it should take up its place in the accessories of poetry beside the peacock
In Australia
and the
and New Zealand,
pomegranate.
honey is widely used in hospitals. In addition, numerous clinical trials have shown that dressings with honey get
Contemporary
rid of
art is
fearsome
also
flesh-eating
interested by
bacteria
fleas.
rapidly.
With this pot of honey, that's to say for less than €1, we can treat
Fleas
2 or
have
3
become the
patients
creative universe
and
of
achieve
Ponda,
astonishing
a young
results
painter
on
who
healing.
spends a lot of
As
time
I'm
in
going
art
to show you.
galleries in Santa
You
Cruz,
see, in this
California.
sequence, the change
Her
in the wound,
bestiary
which
is
ends up
filled with
fully
all the
healed in
aliens
less
from our
than 20
nightmares.
days.
I'm a friend to these nasty creatures that other people
Indeed.
are repulsed by, and
There's
in
a
my art I
very,
look
very
for
big
horrifying
change.
subjects that would give other people nightmares.
Even though it
and I like
remains
to
very
put them in my
detached.
art because it wakes people up and perhaps
I
provokes them
find that
into
there
seeing
it's
things
good.
in a new way. And usually when they see them the first time, they're drawn in by the colors and the shapes.
At the
and then they
pharmaceutical
look
level,
and they say,
opposition
"But it's a
remains
flea."
determined, which one can understand, because these companies have every interest in making sure honey is kept out of healing.
Bees also use propolis harvested on certain trees as
This
a health
creator of
defense.
contemporary art calls himself an
When they
artistic
kill an
dictator.
intruder, insect or rodent
It's
that they
true
cannot
that he
move,
works using
they then
thousands
proceed
of
to
dead
cover it with
flies
this
which have been
antibacterial.
raised to be killed and used in art.
For the moment in France, the choice of honey is still made in a tailored fashion.
My worry
For
is
fly
this:
slaughterer
will it
Jean-Marie
always be so
Javardin,
soft?
his works do not blaspheme God
If you keep
or
it
man.
at around
They are
18
only
degrees,
a
there's
material
no
which
problem.
enables him to express his
Do you
macabre
think this honey
visions.
spreads easily?
Yes, absolutely.
These precious dead bodies are piled up in thousands in a coffer, waiting to be reborn in artwork.
For a long time, honey has been used in India as an antiseptic. Every day, numerous patients queue up for a consultation with Dr.
Born to
Gokula,
die, the flies of the
ophthalmology
art
surgeon
dictator
at the
are
Medical
killed in
College of
programmed
Rangaraya
catastrophes.
in India.
All the bodies are sorted out carefully, and the deformed or underdeveloped are systematically
The fact of
removed.
finding yourself with
This
lotus
maniac
honey in your
task
eye
has no
may seem
mercantile
strange,
vision,
if not
but is an
unpleasant.
obsessional destiny.
However, in Ayurveda, the ancient
Everything
medical
started with a
science,
child's
honey was
vision.
already known
I
for
saw the
treating
roof of a
illness in
huge
eyes
army
and
tent
other
covered
parts
with
of the
wriggling
body.
insects, and this vision has never left me.
We have a method of treatment where we use decoction.
I agree with
added
critics who
1/4
say
of
my
honey.
work must have
This
something to
entire
do with
quantity is
genocide.
assisted to the
When the gas enters the room, you only think of saving yourself and try to find the exit. The weakest are crushed by the strongest.
Evaluate these
It's
ancient
terrible.
methods and test some new honey.
There are screams, cries, and total despair. And I imagine all this through flies.
It's very, very, very tasty. It's rather very sweet and having little sour.
Girardin's works are dedicated to all human catastrophes wherever men fall like
We
flies.
have felt about the honey.
The reflection of the viewer becomes a shared approach to death.
Dr. Gokulan is researching other qualities in honey in order to find new anti-inflammatory and antibacterial properties. But unfortunately, the majority of beekeepers only produce lotus honey, the most widespread medical nectar.
When the
Dr.
art
Gokulan
dictator
has decided to go into the jungle to look for wild
dedicated to
use
fly
other
people.
flowers to create their honey.
Other artists aren't only interested by the insect, but by what it makes. In this way, spider silk
the
is a
bee is a
luxury
flying
product
pharmacy.
for a lot of high-fashion designers. The problem is harvesting enough of the precious substance.
Wild swarms are always difficult to locate, and sometimes luck strikes there where you
Frenchman
least
Gerard
expect it.
Fivet is convinced that spider breeding is possible on a large scale, and that there is no need at all to call upon artificial silk for certain productions. He has
Thanking
in fact
Mother
created
Nature and
his
the
own
bees has
system
become
of
a daily
silk
ritual
extraction.
for Dr. Gokulan.
His workers, Madagascar Nephila's spiders, are attached by their abdomens and isolated in individual cages. The thread is drawn out and wound using a small motor at a rate of 200 meters of silk per hour and per spider. Gerard Fivet sees no reason why spider silk should not be marketed, given that silk from the cocoons of Bombyx mori has been collected in a non-industrial fashion for 50 centuries.
You love honey, very good.
This little girl will
During the reign of
the
Louis
60%
XIV,
success
due
rate
to a
achieved
lack
by
of
Dr.
sufficiently
Gokulan
large
thanks to honey,
spiders in
and
France,
at the lowest price
silk
in a
was
country where
collected from
modern
their
medicine is
cocoons.
too expensive.
Indeed, all female spiders wrap their eggs in a
If
protective
it might
silk
seem
cocoon.
surprising to put honey
This
in your eye,
cocoon
nobody
consists
would dream of putting a
silk
fly
threads
there.
of different
And however,
diameters, which makes spinning
in
a
Mexico,
delicate
doctor
task.
flies are all the rage.
Despite this difficulty,
Like
Louis
many insects,
XIV
their
was the
bodies are
first
covered
sovereign
with
to wear socks and a
bactericidal
vest made of
substances.
spider silk.
Doctor flies do the trick.
Gerard Fivet feels that, given the abundance of Nephila's spiders in Madagascar, many unemployed people could be given jobs collecting silk. Already in the 19th century, the missionary Paul Cambouet carried out the first industrial trials of spider silk weaving in Madagascar.
Father Cambouet produced this fabric for the 1901 Universal Exhibition in Paris, a piece measuring 3 by 5 meters and requiring 400 to 500,000 spiders. These numbers may appear enormous, but are comparable with the production figures of the Bombyx silkworm.
These immense web frames enabled the spiders to maintain their territories. At their
John
feet,
Church is
perfumed
called the maggot
plants
man.
attracted insects to the webs in
This
great
extraordinary
numbers.
experience some years ago when a man drove himself off
This
the
belt
motorway
has been woven
through the
entirely
windscreen
from spider silk.
and had terrible head
Fabrics
and
made of
chest
spider
injuries.
silk have a more
Lay
subtle
for
glow
3
than
days
those made from
in the
Bombyx
open.
silk.
And then the police brought him into the hospital, and to the nurse's horror and disgust, his wounds were full of maggots. But when I arrived...
The great couturiers have made no mistakes in this matter. They love spider silk and demand it for working textiles in new ways.
And that's how my interest was aroused and how I've eventually become...
You don't suffer from spider phobia?
Spiderwebs, no, spiders, yes.
Parce que je t'ai préparé un petit foulard avec à peu près 1 mètre carré, même plus de toile d'araignée que je possédais de façon que je Ah oui, j'espère.
Magnifique, c'est original et en tout cas très agréable.
Super. Ah oui, celle-là par rapport à la toile d'araignée, qu'est-ce que t'en penses?
C'est un modèle séduisant ça, mais oui, la femme est complètement prise au piège.
Oui, mais c'est quand même pour séduire et elle va prendre l'autre au piège également.
Have you had these before in this way? No. Well, as you see, there they are.
A dress made out of spiderweb is as attractive as the spiderweb is repulsive. Because I think the feel of spiderweb on the skin is even more expressive, erotic, sensual, and sexual. So all these things are contained in the spiderweb.
Jean-Luc is an artist. He makes clothes directly from spiderwebs.
John, it's now some months since this wound healed.
I intend to create underwear.
If I examine it like this,
Spiderweb may be highly evocative when it's coloured red and white like menstrual napkins, as it may when it's extremely light and transparent be compared to a veil with all the erotic qualities of the veil.
John, this is the picture where the maggots are.
For example, when we paint a torn house spider web black, it's hard not to think of a woman's stocking that's been mistreated during some encounter or other.
And here is the time when the gangrenous skin has gone, but there's still some yellow tissue, and that was also eaten by the next lot of maggots, is that right?
Yes.
And after that it went
Jean-Luc Brogniot is an artist with more than one string to his bow. His spider works include paintings in which he uses 3 types of spider silk. Today, 300 treatment centers have opened in England, and over 1,500 people have already been treated by maggot therapy. In Central Africa, they practice termite therapy of the future. He plays with the paradoxes of taking living soldier termites from a termite hill and crushing their heads to obtain a healing paste. While the web symbolizes the past, it is also a material of the future. It appears fragile, yet the silk is so strong. He tries to convince the father that this potion will cure his daughter's ulcer. Magnificent when covered in frost or morning dew. Jean-Luc Brogniot's paintings are traps for emotions. As in most pygmy villages, modern medicine is non-existent. Jean-Luc finds the finest specimens in all farms. As an alternative, sometimes the webs stretch over more than 7 meters applied to the wound. For Nedunazi, termites are a family business. These 8-legged workers work untiringly at night to provide him with his raw material.
All that I know, I learned from my father.
His paintings will perhaps fascinate the most implacable of spider
have cured ulcers with termites for many generations. It only stopped when the missionaries arrived and tried to end our initiation rites.
In Japan, it's not the spider webs which are made by the artist, because the artist is in the web.
Now, I've started to use this technique
lives
again.
With his spiders. These strange collaborators are
and
artists,
I'm trying to spread the word so people who don't have access to antibiotics can care for themselves.
It is their story
using this
he is writing,
technique instead.
the story of the fighting spiders.
Spider fights are a tradition that dates back to the time of my grandfather's grandfather. I'm working to perpetuate this tradition. It's my passion. I want to transmit the tradition to my son and to my son's son. Before, there were spider fights everywhere, but today, only those in Kajiki remain.
It is probably the secretions from glands and spiders living in his office. Mr. Seki often goes hunting for new specimens. His objective
To find better
Chitin
eight-legged
has
fighters
remarkable
for the next
bactericidal
competition.
properties and
Spiders
is
with
also
an aggressive
non-toxic
instinct.
and biodegradable. Soldier termites are just horn shields with oversized pairs of clipper shears. This armament is so heavy and cumbersome that they have to
will
be
be chosen to
by worker
participate
termites.
in the next fight. Already in his father's time, the best places for collecting spiders were kept secret. Back then, women did not have any contact with the spiders. Only men had the right to train them.
The panoply of the
this person, she does the same as your grandfather did with shochu, a strong alcoholic beverage.
In fact, they have developed guns.
When you do that, it sends the spiders into a rage
enemy through this tube
to make them more aggressive.
The rules of the game have not changed. Placed on a stick, the spiders face each other.
Also find
Their silk
applications
threads
in
like
medicine.
safety belts. The winner is the one who manages to remain on the stick and cut the thread of
Berrod
its opponent.
Nidonatsi is proud of his success stories. In particular, a Japanese
For
couple
4
treated
centuries,
for
as the
persistent
Kumo-Gassing,
ulcers
the
and
spider fighting
Papatos's termite
championship
miracle.
approaches, the town of Kaijiki is infused with
This
great
man
excitement.
has only been treated with termites. He had had an ulcer
this
for
year,
over
our
a year.
secret
is to feed the spiders with honey could do nothing more for him because it was infested with I'm sure we're going to win. You have to believe it.
That's serious. Why was that?
Because there was nobody to clean the ulcer. Yes, this spider ate 4 in his village. It's the strongest one I
Central
have.
African
It can
Republic
win.
television covered the event. Everyone wanted to see Thomas, who had had
Each
a
trainer
miracle
has his
cure
own
with termites.
secrets for training his spiders. Some dope the insects that the spiders eat with dope 28 days of treatment and throw cotton soaked in honey to stimulate them.
You remember what it was like?
Each one has his specific method for raising
almost a
spiders.
ghost story.
We don't know
Because
which is
people who
best,
come back from the dead
but
are
everyone
ghosts, aren't
thinks
they?
it's his own
Thomas
technique.
was really far gone.
Today is a grand day for Berrod. He has been invited to the
They
presidential
haven't
palace
bitten
to
each
give a
other yet.
conference on the termite healer.
That's it. It's been bitten.
In spite of Mr. Seki's encouragement, his daughter still fears contact with the
Hello,
spiders.
Dr. Donoval. I'm here for the ceremony. Look, it's been bitten on the backside. It's bleeding. The blood is brown. Human blood is red, but spiders have brown blood. Today it's a training session, but it's gone too far.
Today, the spiders are no longer allowed to kill each other,
hello, Doctor.
even if Westerners continue to call them samurai spiders.
The ambassadors and the UN and WHO delegates were convened for the presentation.
At last, the big day of the Kumo-Gassing has arrived. 150 trainers have registered their best competitors.
This recent
Each one
work
must present
on
3
termites
spiders to be able to participate in the fights.
has revealed their
Mr.
therapeutic
Seki can be proud.
virtues.
His entire family is there, even his daughter.
I met the Zandes
500
in Bakuma.
fights will be held during the Kumo-Gassing
They
before
make
the great
termite
champion
paste.
is designated. A spider must win
Simple
3 fights
food
to gain
paste.
access to the finals.
That you
It's
can
number
keep
one.
for years
No,
and years.
it's
only
only
number 2, the strong one.
Without it
I'll get
going
it out
moldy.
later.
It's not
Papa
number
Thomas
1.
owes his life to the termites, and
Go
the
on,
proof
go
is
on.
convincing.
Go on, go on.
Berrod hopes to use this clinical success to market
Get,
termite pie and other handy
go on,
bits of
go on,
mandibles on a
go
large
on.
scale.
Victory for Satoshi, Mr. Seki's son. The thread of the opponent's spider has been cut, but where has the loser gone? Fortunately, the victory is confirmed by the judges.
This woman, who looks more like a termite mound, has painful joints.
Oh, it's falling, it's
For the
falling.
Put your hand
healers
underneath
of the
it
Ivory
like that.
Coast, termite earth is an excellent orthopedic plaster.
Don't worry,
and
it won't
also
touch
heals
you,
lumps
not your
and
hand.
chickenpox, as long as it's
Mr.
applied
Seki's
regularly.
daughter must stand up to last year's winner. The match will be difficult.
Some
Your
even
turn.
use it to help with
Okay.
diagnoses. They tell a patient to urinate on the mound. If the termites rush up to drink the urine, the patient has got diabetes. Next. Healing with termites seems like a real job, but what about ants?
Go on, go on.
First round lost for Mr.
These
Seki's
Australian
daughter.
ants have
Go on,
therapeutic
go on,
qualities
go
like
on.
termites
Go
do.
on, go on, go
The
on.
problem is getting
Go
near
on.
them because their sting is
Go
very
on.
painful.
Go on, go on. Go on, go on, go on. Go on.
And the second. Luckily, the Seki family still has its spider number
Through
1.
working with these very
It
aggressive
could be the
ants,
champion.
Craig Angus has become
This is a
allergic
good
to
fight.
their pheromones, resulting in sneezing fits. He's dressed in his commando gear to avoid any contact with them.
The one on the top has gone underneath.
Yes, they've
Craig
changed
Angus
places.
is the assistant of Professor Andrew Beattie,
we've
who worked on
lost.
the antibiotic properties of ants. But it's not only spiders that were fairground
Craig
insects.
has mastered the
Flies
art of
and
ant
fleas
bondage.
were real circus
The objective
animals
is
in
to
Europe
extract
at the
without
start of the
killing the
20th
ant
century.
an
antiseptic substance contained in its glands. The quantity is minute, but enough to give the
In
ant
the
good
roaring
immunity
20s,
against
flies
germs.
were so agile on their little feet that it was even said that they were as good as circus fleas. Concentrating hard, Craig checks his hold once again while the ant tries to sting him.
Laughter and romance presents a new thrill for tourists. You pay your 10 francs and voila, a ringside seat at the smallest
In
show
this
on
box,
earth.
all the
Monsieur Robert's
bacteria
paying
around
free
the 2
circus.
drops of
But don't
ant
come too
antibiotic
close.
have
Those
been
microbes
eliminated.
are man-eaters. And what a show it is.
Aboriginal
Alibaba and the
Australians
40 fleas.
understood the antibiotic properties of ants. They would throw a cloth onto an ant nest until it was covered in ants, and then
What
shake
thrills,
them
what
off,
a spectacle.
stir the
Prince Charming
antibiotic
himself
properties of
riding up in the
ants.
fairy coach.
They would throw a
No,
cloth
he'd come
onto
by
an ant
taxi
nest
instead.
until it was covered in ants, and then shake them off, and then bind a wound with the cloth.
And so
It must
to the
have been
ball.
impregnated
But
with
jitterbug benefit.
antibiotics because it had immediate healing properties.
Just when everything's going fine, pandemonium breaks out. That's Prince Charming gone west. Those
Man
fleas
only
get hopping
discovered
mad, and the
antibiotics
audience
60 years
scratches for
ago,
dear life.
whereas ants
But
have been
the
using
show
them for
must
60
go on.
million years.
Next time, don't forget the DDT.
The conventional use of antibiotics is causing resistance on the part of the bacteria that cause
Performing fleas
human
harnessed to
diseases
hearses and
worldwide.
cannons already
New
existed in
sources
the
of
18th century,
antibiotics
and
have
by
to be found as
1923
quickly
there
as
were so
possible.
many flea
We
circuses
believe
in
that our
France that a
research
law was
into
actually
antibiotics
proposed
produced by
to
ants
protect
and
fleas
other
from
insects
cruelty during their
will
training.
provide insights into new ways of fighting human disease.
But today, due to the lack of actors,
Mushroom-growing
most
ants
flea
also
circuses have
cultivate
closed.
antibiotics.
Soap has
An
taken a heavy
electron
toll
microscope
and put
reveals a
ex-irritants,
bacterial
the
mousse
fleas
attached
which
to
live
their
on
backs
people,
that
are the
protects
only
them from
flea
the
able
risk
to
of
pull heavy
infection.
loads. Is now
These
a rare
antibiotics
species.
are manufactured in underground chambers from chewed
Some
leaves
flea
that
trainers
turn
are
into a
still going
substratum
strong.
in which the
Maria
fungus grows
and the
and
Cardoso
produces
flea
food and
circus
medicines for
have
the
changed
colony.
their performers for cat fleas, Cetinocephalidus felis.
When I tell people that I'm a flea trainer, they don't believe it, or
The
they think that I'm
mushroom-growing
crazy.
ants
Probably
effortlessly
the
cut
funniest
up
thing about
leaves
this
with
whole
their
thing
powerful
is
jaws.
that
They
I
select
have
a
a
wide
contract
range
to
of
do this flea
vegetation
circus.
as they
I'm getting
regularly
paid,
change
and I
antibiotics,
even got a
as if
raise because
subconsciously
I was not
aware
being
that
paid enough.
pathogenic germs
I'm
mutate.
self-taught. I had been practicing for many years how to harness the fleas, how to make that knot around the neck. Not too tight and not too loose because they escape or they die.
Throughout history, ants have been genuine walking and chewing pharmacists.
The harness
In the
worn
Middle
by
Ages in
performing
Europe,
fleas
people
is
used
made
their
from
formic
extremely
acid to
fine
preserve
copper
animal
wire,
corpses
tightened
and to
behind
clean
its
certain
mane.
wounds.
Some trainers use hairs from their own heads. In the 18th
More recently
century,
in
there was a
Africa,
trade
they
in
were used
fleas
as
harnessed
surgical
together in
staples
display as
closed cup.
domestic pets.
They bit into
This
the
was the
flesh in
origin
such a
of
way that the
performing flea
sides of the
circuses.
wound closed. Once the jaws closed, the ant's body was cut off, leaving just the insect staple. Whereas insects were once used as real tools, today in modern medicine, they're being used as living syringes and for diagnosis.
After her success in flea circus on the American continent, Maria Cardoso trains her artists for their European tour. For that, she has imagined a special number called striptease.
Which one? Take the black one, it's fastest.
The method of using fleas as living syringes for transmitting vaccines was invented by the French bioespace team led by Elizabeth. They have been vaccinating wild rabbits against myxomatosis for several years already.
Bring me
And
the
in
first
Munich,
rabbit to
Maria
come out
begins
so we
her
can
tour.
collect the fleas.
Okay.
This is where the methods
Ferrets
are just the thing.
The
to
largest
frighten the
flea
rabbits out of their
circus
holes
still
in
in
existence,
activity.
where a few weeks before Elizabeth had released a batch of vaccinating
The
fleas.
mothers have been flea trainers from father to son for the last
There he is.
150 years.
Hoppity hop. Catch it, Robert. Let go. Look, you can see them.
Well, they're off.
So many of them.
Elizabeth collects the fleas so she can check if the fleas on the rabbits are her special vaccinating variety. Hans is often called Professor for his knowledge about performing fleas.
But in fact, all he does is capture the spontaneous motor responses of his performers who were trying to 3 weeks ago. Fleas held upside down with their legs in the air turn a ball as they try to make their way along the ground whenever they fed. The same reflexes make fleas pull the heavy golden carriages along. Fleas found on people can pull over 400 times their own weight. Horses can only pull 4.
Fleas will always be parasites. It's part of their genetic makeup and can't be changed. But we can change their image. Instead of being pests, we can make them do good.
A blood sample shows at once if the fleas have given the rabbits immunity to myxomatosis.
Hans feeds his fleas every 4 hours.
Elizabeth
uses a UV radiation sensor to detect the yellow fluo traces of the
vaccinating
fleas. Because
fleas.
they hit the cover every time they jump, they get tired very quickly and soon get out of the habit.
In the
All his
virus
performers
laboratory,
live
a
there with
high-security
all their
P3
accessories during their 3-month
mosquitoes
captivity.
are used as diagnostic tools. Dr. Vazay's team uses them when it's impossible to determine whether a disease is viral or bacterial in origin.
The Mattis circus is 3 generations old. Of the 7 children, I'm the only one to have become a flea
Thus, the
trainer.
mosquito donates its body to science.
My uncle once put on a performance for Queen Elizabeth
Vazay
and a
injects
family of the
strains
Tsar
of diseases
and
she
travelled
cannot
everywhere in
identify
Europe.
into the digestive tracts of mosquitoes.
Today, I find
These
it very
strains
difficult to
multiply
get
quickly in
fleas.
their bodies,
I
making
usually get them
identification
from the
possible.
Tropen Institute or during my holidays. I often brought back splendid specimens from the Paris underground.
Virus amplification is one of the first positive uses of mosquitoes. Another use envisaged is the
Hans's
production
whole
of
life and fortune
anticoagulants.
is in these 2 boxes.
Tomorrow, maybe mosquitoes will be used as living syringes in the same way as fleas are already used now, but instead to vaccinate human beings.
He recognizes his fleas individually like a shepherd recognizes his sheep. His grandfather used to give them names.
We drink their venom, eat their jaws, and swallow down the tiniest of them.
Hollywood has found a way to do without the performers. With help from the experts who have made the special effects for Ghostbusters, Ernie has developed
Mrs.
5
Wang
automated
raises
flea
tarantulas for
services
Chinese
which are
medicine
currently
and
traveling
sells them
all
dry
over the
with
USA.
wine.
At first, my spiders lived in my house. One day, some neighbors who were visiting me came face to face with one of them. And they said, "Are they dangerous?" And I replied, "No, they're good for our health."
Mrs. Wang's spiders are recommended for rheumatism. The Chinese have not waited for modern science to tell them that diluted spider venom can be used to treat all sorts of ills.
All right now. Fly.
Taste it. Taste it.
There it goes.
Can you tell what it is?
To the bar, ladies and gentlemen. He
No.
made it to the bar.
What is it?
Oh, I think
Spiders. It's spider wine.
The Flazzini.
Oh, really?
I love to watch the children. They go to their parents and tell them exactly what the fleas
Apparently,
look like
her spider
and what
wine
they
is
saw the
effective,
fleas do.
since she
You
receives
see, the
many
children,
orders for it from all
they
over
really
China.
see those fleas.
Some of her patients use it for toothache, kidney problems, paralysis, and, with the addition of dates, to treat inflammation.
Did you catch him? Yes, you did. You got him. One of the funniest things that happened to us, we were working at a large California fair.
Every week,
and the fair
Mrs.
manager
Wang
came
makes
over. He
deliveries
wanted
to
to
the
check and make
traditional
sure that we had
pharmacies
the
that buy
proper
her
health
spiders in
permits
wine
for
or
our
dried
fleas.
form.
I had to take him aside and show him that we didn't need any health permits because we didn't have any real fleas.
In Hollywood, insects don't just do circus, they're also making films.
Look, there are even more
Stephen
nests
Kutcher
here.
turns ants into stars.
This one must be big.
There we go. We get more activity.
Yesterday, we found quite a few.
Looks good. Halfway through the
There's
load.
sure to be a big spider in this one. The entrance is really wide.
This looks really good now.
Oh, man.
Some people ask how difficult is it to film ants? Well, when you're filming ants, you have to think like an ant. Most people who make films think like human beings, but I think like an ant. Make sure you curve it a little bit so it doesn't go so straight. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, that looks really good. But ants take a long time to walk, so if you have an ant going a long distance, it's too much film time, so why not just do the beginning and the end?
Mrs. Wang is happy with her catch.
I mean, this run is only a short distance, you know, you only really need to get them for that much.
Okay, that'll work out for us.
Mrs. Wang has been bitten more than 20 times. One day she had to be hospitalized, but she's never given up. Stephen is full of ideas. He's even found a method of filming ants that walk underwater.
When I was younger, I was afraid of spiders, but one day I lost my job, so I started breeding them. At first, I looked for them in the mountains, but there were fewer and fewer. That's why I started a spider farm. Now I have 50,000 of them.
Is this a full mag?
It's a full mag. You got 10 minutes. You hold that stick for 10 minutes?
If you make it look good,
the finest specimens gathered in the mountains are destined for breeding. The others will be drowned in the elixir wine to conserve, according to Mrs.
reckons that ants can survive 14 days without breathing underwater.
The elixir can also be drunk for its aphrodisiac properties. Each month, Mrs. Wang takes the bus with her frightening load of
In Western
tarantulas.
society, the image of the ant is fairly positive. It's a symbol of tenacity, efficacy, vivacity.
Going advertises have been inspired to the Medical Institute for its pharmacopoeia.
But in the cinema, the ants are less sympathetic. They are usually represented as real warriors, surely because of their natural weapons. Jaws,
In the land of
glue
Mao,
sprays,
fall from the
caterpillars,
skies.
formic acid,
These
splitting
bird rats are
bladders.
not only very tasty and crunchy, they are considered by the Chinese as a true panacea for one's health.
Their fighting instinct and their conquering armies can only inspire numerous science fiction directors.
When I came to Hollywood and I began making films, I always
Humans are not the only ones to like them. To protect themselves from predators,
I went to
the
Panama
ants
and
weave
they
their
were
nests
they were
out of
wonderful.
leaves and the
They were
trees.
terrifying to look at.
Watch out.
They were grotesque. They were very intelligent. They were strong, and when blown up to the size of a human, they were a real nightmare.
These ant hunters are professionals. They are collecting them today to prepare their famous elixir. According to traditional Chinese medicine,
Berrod is not just any film director. He has produced more than 27 super productions, even and is a member of the Academy of Hollywood. Prescribed for everything: asthma,
I believe
chronic
that if
hepatitis,
ants
poor blood
developed
circulation.
into the size of man, they would be a big threat. They're very intelligent the way they are now with the tiny brain, but they would be a real
Taste
threat
this.
to man.
It's ant wine. It's good for you. Try some. 3 times a day, 1 glass at a time.
For Mr. Lee, ants are black gold. He has made a fortune out of them. Today he has to
May
go to the
Berrod
harvester
is an
to select
entomology
the best
professor,
aromas.
but she also runs a festival devoted to films about ants that she organizes with her film professor husband.
I used to be afraid of insects when I was a kid, so I can relate to people who don't like them or are phobic about them. And this festival is a way to reach those people. If, for example, we were to advertise a lecture on insect physiology, nobody would come. But if we advertise a movie with giant ants in the sewers of Los Angeles slaughtering people, we can pack the
These
house.
2 bags are good.
Once we have them in there, we
Yes,
can
they're the same.
tell them a little bit about
I
ants.
tell you, gentlemen, science has agreed that unless something is
little more.
done and done quickly, man as the dominant species of life on Earth will be extinct within a year. Stay in your home. I repeat. Stay in your home. Your personal safety, the safety of the entire city depends upon your
The
full
Chinese are
cooperation
so taken
with the
with
military
eating
authorities.
medicinal ants
Yes,
that
cities,
Mr. Lee
nations,
now has to obtain
even
supplies from
civilization
across the whole
itself,
province by
threatened with
bicycle, by
annihilation.
boat and on foot to keep his factory supplied.
biblical prophecy come true, and there shall be destruction and darkness come upon creation, and the beast shall reign over the earth.
Sorting ants is still done by the use of delicate hands, but Mr. Lee uses industrial pharmaceutical machinery to convert them into powder.
It would have so much trouble dealing with gravity, moving around and breathing that would probably end up collapsing on the ground, gasping for breath.
Is the strongest animal, according to scientists, pulling 400 times its own weight, compared to 4 times for the elephant.
The theme of gigantic animals is at the center of many Hollywood films
to increase your
ants,
strength.
spiders, bees, all of the stinging insects that haunt our imagination.
The weaver ant lives in trees.
During the Cold War,
winter,
driven by the nuclear
damp
arms
soil,
race, the insects
without
usually became
ever
giants
contracting
after an
rheumatism.
accident with radioactivity.
Ants are great against rheumatism.
If Mr. Lee produces 70 tons of ant powder per year, his employees too work like ants. Of course, the cinema could only exploit that visceral repulsion that spiders cause for us. About 100 million producers in Hollywood competed to imagine the most extravagant scenarios. Some even pay for television. These ferocious creatures invade and chase us right into our living room.
Eat ants. It's good for your health.
But who would have thought to eat lice? Spiders that terrorize and kill. There's enough here to nourish our million impulses and fantasies. If the preparation of the drug is traditional, the ingredients may not be. But lice are not the only inexhaustible source of potions. Right before our fleas and cockroaches are more common. Brazil has been using homeopathic medicine since the 17th century. This is what Professor Dan Eric Nilsson is trying to understand by studying spiders' eyes.
Human vision is far superior to spider vision, and the reason for that is that the eyes of nearly all animals are limited by the laws of physics, which means that you need a large eye to see well, and spiders with their much smaller eyes, of course, can't see as well as humans. But if you think of the giant spiders of horror movies, they of course have large eyes and potentially very good vision. So if those spiders were real, considering not just the fact that their eyes were large, but also the fact that they've got 8 eyes rather than 2, they would potentially, in that sense, pose a threat to human
water, 70% alcohol, 20% alcohol, lactose, and of course,
It is not just in the spider's eyes that we can find answers to why the spider incites so many fears and fantasies. It is also in its behavior. Formidable predators, the females of certain species devour the male after coupling.
Pollen from aromatic fruit trees, a flowering orchard.
The writer Michael Cazenave is trying to share his interest in the behavior of spiders as portrayed in the cinema and literature.
This is fiendish. The fantasy of the spider woman is certainly one of the most widespread, because it's found at practically every epoch and in all places. And it undoubtedly refers back to a fundamental fear
taster, Mr. Percy
that humans are not
left his career as an agronomist to devote
an animal
his
that
time to the
devours
curative
us as we're
properties
making
of fresh pollen collected in beehives.
So there's this idea, which in fact we find more or less everywhere, that at the end of a woman's vagina is a spider's nest that waits to devour us, to make us a very bad pulmonary problem which left me in a state not only fatigue. And it was while I was in this state that I ate some pollen that came from my beehives. And this pollen got me back into extraordinary good shape. What I do every time I used to stop taking it, what's wrong with you? Overtake me by fatigue. This is what gave me the idea of starting a fresh pollen business.
Il y a toujours dans la constitution masculine, je dirais, d'une part une peur absolument extraordinaire, qui est est-ce que je vais être capable de faire ça? Il y a en même temps cette idée, est-ce que dans mon impuissance, il n'y a pas quelque chose qui va être pris, qui va être capté par la femme, comme si d'une certaine manière elle nous prenait notre subsidial.
They store it in specially designed pouches on their back legs, which would be the equivalent to man of carrying 2 25-kilo suitcases. Pollen is used as food for the larva. It is richer in protein than the honey used by the adults, and it is also an excellent antibacterial. The pollen's virtues are perfectly preserved thanks to its very strong outer shell.
Patrice Percy-Ducer is a happy man. These laboratory tests
What's quite astonishing is that the spider seems to occupy the dreams and fantasies of the whole of humanity. Absolutely
contains more proteins than
and curiously, the idea of male and female spiders doesn't come into it. The spider is always a female. That's to say, the female is always at the centre of a metaphorical web, if you like. She waits for the male to capture him in the net and manipulate him, and in the end,
there are over
devour him.
300 species of edible insects. Some dishes, a heritage from pre-Columbian times or advertising, prepared from the insect is placed in a situation or suggested in proximity to female genitals. A way of using the visceral repulsion felt by women confronted with the danger represented by penetration by an
these
insect.
culinary habits have been replaced by American-style cuisine.
Cigarettes.
That's a pity, as these flies contain 50% more protein than a hamburger. They're 5 or 6 times easier to digest, and they're delicious.
This man is the bee specialist of Hollywood, and often studios ask him to put bees on beautiful flowers.
Are the answer to world
These
famine.
G-string bees, luckily, aren't dangerous. They are just simply intoxicated and attracted by some odorous substances, reticent, the pheromones from a queen that Norman Gary has placed on the underwear of pre-Columbian civilizations. According to some experts, a large part of the population will be unable to feed itself in 30 years. Paradoxically, insects abound around us and represent an unlimited reservoir of protein to counter malnutrition. Fishing for aquatic flies still happens in Mexico. This Mexican lake is now dried up, and Pedro can only fish in the few channels that remain. But he still harvests enough to keep a family of 12 children alive.
Norm, they didn't have pheromones back in the 40s, but look at those bees up behind his ear and on his neck.
I think he probably hit a queen bee.
If the flies are less common in the little channels, they're abundant in the salty lakes.
Most actors are very afraid of the bees.
Aquatic flies are found in their millions on Lake Mono in the USA, very close to the Mexican frontier. They have abundant algae there to feed on, and very few predators. At the end of the 19th century, the Cutzadica Indians harvested them in sufficient numbers to be able to fill several sacks. They appreciated their nutritive qualities and their taste. The first settlers called them
I
the
consulted
fly
with
eaters.
the director on this film, and instead of using my pheromone techniques to control bee behavior, he decided to hire about 25 people to look through microscopes.
Like the Cutzadica Indians, Pedro and his wife cook them in fly biscuits which they sell at market. In the 60s, swarms of bees were to become the stars of Hollywood horror movies. To preserve them, the flies are first dried out, then crushed finely with a mortar. Norman Gary was originally an apiculture teacher. Before the Hollywood studios hired him to put a stop to accidents between bees and their star flies at least, looks rather like the food they
Once I was
prefer.
asked to do a stunt for a
As
Hollywood
for
film in
Julieta,
which
she
the
verifies the
actress
nutritive
had to
qualities of each of her
reach
dishes
in with her bare
scientifically.
hands and
She is
this
convinced that a
wild bee
ratatouille
nest,
made with
grab
maggots
the
is as good
honeycomb
as fresh
and
cream.
pull it out. Well, the stunt person was afraid to do this, so the well-known actress did
To
her
convince
own
waverers,
stunt,
Julieta recently
and there were
published a
hundreds
book
bees
of
all
extremely
over her, and she
wide-ranging
didn't get a
recipes.
single sting.
Good health and bon appetit.
That's the way we throw it, John. The Hollywood directors love that.
Norman Gary has, of course, entered the Guinness Book of Records, and advertising agencies are very fond of pictures of his body covered in bees, but his wife still has trouble getting used to this.
Wow, that's a pretty scary picture. About how many bees do you think you have on you?
I think around 50,000 or so.
Wow.
It's a lot.